Welcome to the Conquer Risk podcast from Potomac Fund Management. So my name's Jeff. I've got my business partner Manish Kata here with me, and we've got a topic that has been pretty pertinent to both of us over the last year that we've worked on for different reasons. And it's one that is the title reference for our podcast, right? Should financial advisors stop telling clients to save for college? Well, it's pertinent for both of us because my son just graduated from a four-year college, and he's now dealing with having to pay school loans back. And so that topic obviously relayed to Manish as well, as you've got, you've got your basketball team you're working on.
Yeah, right.
With little ones that you've got to save for.
Before we jump into this, I think it's important to let everyone know, a big shout out to people who do podcasts. This is our third round on this one episode. The first one sucked, and we admitted it. And the second one, my mic conked out, but we didn't find out till after the fact. So it was now the morning of July 4th. Happy Independence Day. And we're in here bright and early trying to get this knocked out. So it's always fun. So yeah, back to 529. So I got two kids and one on the way, and I tasked you about 6 months ago. I said, hey, Jeff, help me out. Do I save in a 529? What kind do I save? What kind do I use? I've done a good job saving money, but I didn't know if those vehicles are a good choice or not. And so I passed it to you to kind of start doing some research. And what'd you come back with?
Well, I think as a starting point, it can be every time I have to deal with 529s or saving for college, that sort of thing, it's something that I think you do have to dive back in because the landscape changes. There's a major change in 09, another change in 14. But one of the things that I want to touch on first, let's hit a couple of statistics just to kind of put some legs underneath this topic. The class of 2018, which my son was part of, 69% of students took school loans. The average was $29,800 for a balance, and 14% of parents took an average of $35,600 in loans. So, parents are taking loans to help their kids in addition to what the kids are doing, which is an interesting subject because, right, if you save enough early enough, well, you wouldn't need to necessarily do that. Some folks are fortunate enough to have cash flow to cover that. But this is a big topic. There's over $500 billion more in school loans than there are in credit card debt, and we all know how much we talk about credit card debt as being a bad thing. So, and all those stats are from Student Loan Hero. We'll provide the links to anything we talk about in the show notes. That's not a problem. You can go look at it yourself later.
To that point, I was listening to a podcast this morning, and I didn't know this. An interesting stat came up that 80% of those school loans are actually under $50,000. And the vast majority of those are actually under 25. So there's a very small percentage that are over the 250 range, and presumably those people are taking those loans to become doctors or lawyers or something that's going to give them high salaries. So I think it does skew the data. It's sort of dangerous when you use these averages and whatnot, but it for sure, to your point, it's obviously a problem that needs to be addressed and is in the media, obviously, with the debates and everything going on.
Yeah, well, it's definitely something that is an issue because let's face it, right? A loan is a loan is a loan. Anytime that you owe somebody something, you're not only paying for what they let you borrow, but you're paying interest. And every time you're paying interest, you're paying something that instead is not going to your standard of living. It's not going to your other investments, right? I mean, you're simply giving somebody else extra money. And obviously, if we can avoid that, and the sooner we can avoid it, the better off we are from a financial planning, holistic standpoint.
And just a whole other topic that we should probably look into next time is I also heard that it's 44% of the government balance sheet. How the heck did the government even get into this where they are, the sole provider of these loans? Why not just, tie it or peg it to the federal funds rate? I don't know. There's a lot of wide-ranging topics this can splinter off into.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I'll throw something in here that wasn't in my show notes. Here's a fun one. It should be in recommendations. But Adam Ruins Everything is a TV show that goes through statistics. They provide the stats later in their own show notes. And one of the things that I learned from that show, it's actually a pretty funny deal. I didn't know at the time until a couple years ago that school loans cannot be removed by a bankruptcy. I mean, think about that for a second, right? Of all the things we put an emphasis on, I've got to make sure I pay my car on time. I've got to make sure I pay my house on time. I've got to make sure I pay the Hulu bill, right? Well, wait a second here. If you really end up in a bind, you've made some mistakes or you've had a problem or something, hiccup in the road, school loans can't be wiped out. So get those suckers, get it handled as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Definitely. All
Okay,
right.
so
So,
let's move on. So the 529,
yeah.
you did some research there, and the goal was we are advisors, we are money managers, so it wasn't just finding a good 529 plan for a certain situation. It was, for an advisor, what plans out there sort of popped up for you?
Yeah, so we had some criteria, and I do think it's true that in most cases you're going to run into probably two or three different general situations, right? Like anything. The resource that I prefer every time I do this, I try and do a broad scope, and keep coming back to savingforcollege.com. Great website, just mind blowing information. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff out there. But I narrowed it down to five, right? And it was really three states, which is or four states, excuse me. But not there are a couple of them. Nebraska and Nevada both have two plans each, and so it wasn't that I liked both plans. It's just they each had one that I liked. So Alabama, Nebraska, Nevada, and Utah, and those four states were worth more review. And part of the review for us, right? The criteria in this particular case, we're tactical, unconstrained managers. So the thought of trading a couple of times a year, or making investment changes a couple of times a year, is a little bit of a struggle, right? But we want to make sure in this particular case you wanted to have plenty of investment options available to be able to, at least when you do make a change, you've got something to change to. Because here's one of the
let me
go ahead.
let me. This is, I think, important because there is no right answer, and it depends on what your criteria is. And I think I did a disservice by not mentioning this earlier. That I mentioned to you that having an emerging markets fund or ETF was a big deal for me, for a lot of different reasons that we won't get into. And the normal person may not have that criteria. Maybe they just, and maybe they shouldn't. Maybe just have an S&P fund and call it a day. But that was a criteria for me, and I didn't care about the states, which doesn't really matter anyway, right? It's a big misconception that you need to get a plan in your state. So that was at least one criteria, is the investment selection options, and in particular the emerging markets.
Yeah, and that's why we ended up with the Nebraska plan that is through TDA. That particular plan had plenty of investment options. I mean, it was the most reasonable. The costs were reasonable. Like everything about it seemed to fit. But one of the things that I do think is kind of humorous in this day and age, right? Even the government and the regulatory agencies want financial advisors to help clients. But basically, I mean, Utah's plan is trying to be a little bit more advisor friendly and allowing a download, and you can speak to that
That's
a bit.
it. Yeah, I mean that's it.
It.
So we looked into it. They were at a conference, an Orion Advisor conference, and I'm like, okay, maybe there's some headwind making in this space. And I went to talk to them, and still no management fee, no trading. I think that's a government rule. And the only thing was a download. So yes, you can report on it. You can at least monitor it. But you and I both know, unless you let advisors take a fee or a management fee, from an incentive point of view, no one's going to pay attention to that space. It's just...
and you're right. I mean, in 2014 is when they switched from one trade a year to two trades a year. That was made a permanent change. But I mean, in the scheme of things, right, you got to have a little bit of compensation. Otherwise, you're just doing this for free, and frankly, it becomes low priority. I mean, that's just, I think, human nature. I'm not throwing any blame out there. It is what it is, right? Most of us aren't running charities, so we try and do the right thing for clients for sure. But at the same time, I know financial advisors like to have at least even if it was a small compensation. There's a little something in it to help out. And the other thing, though, is that they really don't make them graceful for like group trading sort of thing, right? I mean, if you've got discretion over a bunch of accounts, it's still a one-on-one basis. So, it is what it is, right?
Well,
That's just
from
some of the
our
different
perspective,
things.
if you want to help a client out, and you're doing a holistic plan, you're going to help them out in that respect, right?
Oh,
but if
absolutely.
you want advisors to go after this particular market,
Right.
you don't let them have group trading. You don't let them take fees. You limit their investment options. It's just going to be further and further down the pole, and so
Right.
that's unfortunate, and hopefully that changes. So
Yeah,
anyway, the
well,
conclusion really was that you got a couple states, nothing really advisor friendly outside of maybe the Utah plan, if you consider just being able to download advisor friendly.
Right. Yeah, and Utah did have a fair number of investment options, so it wasn't too bad. But when we were looking at them, they were still doing a lot of sort of refresh, and their website was just painful to go through. And I was like, you know what, that really was the big kicker for me. It was like, let's just
That's
not
like the
go
first
there.
turn off. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If it looks like it's from 1973 and you're telling me that you're friendly to modern technology, there's kind of a conflict there. So, I mean, ultimately, right, we're taking the first step in this situation with, okay, well, we do want to use a 529 plan. It did make sense for you in this circumstance. But that's not always the case, right? I mean, the whole point, right? We're supposed to be talking about, should financial advisors tell clients to stop investing for college? And there are several reasons why that has become even a question, right? And one of those is just simply, are we? Is it a control issue, right? Are there things like, being able to those limited trades? Are there things like having to pay a penalty if maybe the student does a great job and gets a full ride scholarship, right? Well, all of a sudden you've done a great job, right? You did what you're supposed to. You save up all this money, and now you have to pay taxes and a penalty because they didn't need the money. Well, that's frustrating.
I'm still not convinced. And I think one of the important topics here is not that you shouldn't save for college, but should you save in those vehicles like a 529 or a
Right.
UGMA? And I'm still not
Right.
convinced that it is the best way to go about it. Luckily I've done a good job saving for college. Is it necessary to do that in a 529 or a UGMA? And
Right.
and that was part of the discussion that we had back and forth, right? And one of
Right.
the things that's helpful is that K through 12 tax law change that allows you to pay for private school, private high school, or anything K through 12 for that matter, and
Right.
that makes it a little bit more appealing, I guess.
Well, that was part of the tipping point for you, right? Was that, okay, well, now there's an additional option beyond just college. Now, fortunately, you have several kids. I only had one, so I mean, granted, I do have
Fortunately,
decent. Yeah, I have more
I
of a
guess it
fortune
depends when you
because,
ask me. Yeah, you have more of a fortune.
but I have some nieces and nephews I could have given money to. But if I put a lot in there, well, the approach that we took and what I like to do with clients is at first when you're dealing with most clients don't have their own liquidity, their own financial house in order, right? They're trying to struggle with that, and then they'll also have this innate feeling that I'm a parent, I'm supposed to save and pay for college. So one of the things that I look at as a contra to saving for college in one of these vehicles is saving money in a separate account, which you alluded to. That way, it's your own money. Now, granted, a 529 leaves control to the grantor, the person who's putting has control over the account. But when it's your own money, you can still choose to use it for college. It's just obviously you're going to pay taxes on the gains along the way. But again, it's kind of a control issue. And if you decide they become a knucklehead or they do something stupid or whatever, it's yours. You can do what you want. And by the way, it's helping your own net worth in that manner. Now, there are some benefits for sure. I mean, with the 529, obviously there's the gift splitting, which I think is a beautiful thing if you're in the position, to do the $15,000 a year without a gift tax or multiply that by 5. And if you have a significant other, right, all of a sudden you can put a whole bucket load of money if there's a windfall. And that comes into play. I've seen that happen in situations with, an inheritance. If the
Well,
timing
can
is
we
right, make good out of a bad situation. So,
can we talk about the elephant in the room though?
yeah, go for it.
What's the point of saving for college if it's going to be free and they're paying for our loans?
Yeah, well, that is definitely another topic for sure. And, we'll see, right? But that's one of the things that, your favorite phrase. You made fun of me on the first episode of my favorite phrase. Well, your favorite phrase is price is what you pay, value is what you get. You first said that in the Las Vegas conference that we were at together back in probably 2007. That's the first time I heard you say that. And, look, I think there is value in creating that struggle for the child to have to pay for some things. And, if we as parents just consistently cover 100% of everything, they haven't learned any lessons along the way. So, that's an argument. That's a personal preference, right? But that's part of our job is to discuss both sides of this argument.
Well, one more thing, and this is probably going to be a separate topic here, a podcast, but, the talk right now is to wipe out student loans. And, we have strong feelings on that. My personal 2 cents is they shouldn't, right? A loan is a loan. You took it out, pay it back. and you took it out for a reason, and that reason is hopefully that you would get paid more in the future because of this higher earning asset, right?
Well, and
And
double bonus,
so
hopefully you actually graduate after you've taken out these loans, right? That's
correct. And it's sort of, I think it'll solve itself. We talk about this all the time. If, with the rise of the internet and the information that's at your fingertips, maybe college becomes useless and therefore less people go and therefore the prices come down. Is it expensive? Yes, it's ridiculous. And the increase in college tuition over the years is getting out of control. But a simple solution is if something else pops up that adds more value, right? But back to topic here. Should college be free? No, right? Point blank, no. But at the same time, there's other options, right? JUCO is a great option.
right,
Trade
right.
schools, different techniques rather than just handing out free college. It lessens the appeal of having that degree to begin with.
Right. I'm a big proponent. My wife and I both went to junior college. Of course, unfortunately, I flunked out of KU first. And then I found out that junior college was pretty cool. Got my head straight, stopped drinking as much, and went back and was on the honor roll. So it wasn't an issue for me, and I had the capability. But what it does bring to light, and I don't admit, I mean, I don't have a problem in admitting that I did some stupid things when I was younger. But it does bring to light the fact that there are a lot of kids that simply are not ready to take on a 4-year institution as soon as they graduate high school. Period.
I mean, if you can recall that far back, we weren't ready for much. I mean,
Yeah.
the first semester, I mean, I got to find these stats about how many kids just flunk out. I remember my freshman year, half the hallway didn't come back for the second semester in the dorm because they all flunked out because you couldn't handle it. You have no parents, you have bars everywhere, and you're on. Even if you take a loan, you have a little bit of extra money to go blow, and so it's difficult. And
Yeah. Well, that's the flashback for me was I had no problem with math, which I guess it's a good thing I do what I do, right? But I tutored several people because algebra at the University of Kansas was a kick-out course, right? There literally was no class. You had the assignments, and then you had in one of the halls, you had hundreds of kids lined up every night for a 4-hour period where you could go and get help from a TA, but you could only ask one question, and then you go to the back of the line. So if you don't get a tutor or you're not good at math, you're not going to make it through algebra. And I didn't have to take algebra, so like I said, that wasn't a problem for me. But I mean, it was an eye opener, right? Like they just want to take your money and then kick your butt out unless you can handle taking care of figuring it out on your own. And that's a beautiful thing about college. It's part of the process, right? Is figuring it out on your own. But I think
maybe
we need to do more
that's what
trade
the
school.
value is. Yeah, maybe that's
Yeah.
where the value is just figuring out life because it's not those core classes. I mean, I say it all the time. Plant biology. I had a Friday morning plant biology class, and Thursday night was the big night on campus. Every Friday morning, my friend would drag me out of bed, take me to plant bio at 7:30 a.m., hungover, just slept in the back. I mean, it's just, but who cares about plant bio? Who cares about half of those classes if your major is
Right.
not in that area? But
Right.
anyway, we're digressing. Let's bring this back home.
Yeah. All right. So one of the things that comes to mind, right, and if you make college for free, right, then a whole lot more people are going to be eligible for college. That's not necessarily a bad thing in and of itself. But one of the unintended consequences is, are the schools prepared? You end up with higher classroom sizes, right? Are they prepared for the living situation? I mean, the attendance could be much, much higher. And that's something that we really, right, unintended consequence, you have to plan for what the result will be. And I think just suddenly making college free is probably not a good thing in the long run. You lower the value, and it is what it is. It's my opinion, right? That's the whole point. This is an opinion. Everybody is in a different situation, but that's where we stand. You've already said you're in agreement with that. But ultimately, one of the questions that comes from that, which we're not going to address, but we do want to at least reference, is the fact that how do we pay for this? Oh my goodness. Do yourself a favor, just watch all the presidential debates. This stuff will get washed out. I mean, right, there'll be a couple of candidates that obviously are saying things that may not make it. Who knows? Not going into down that road. But we may address it later once some of these ideas get shored up and there's more likelihood that
I
they'll
think
come
once the debates get going and we get some actual concrete plans, we'll circle back because I think it's an important topic, right? Without figuring out a way to pay for it, it's moot. So
Right.
we'll circle back. So all right, what else you got?
All right. Well, I think we've probably knocked out several things there in regards to the short answer, which we probably should have started with, is should financial advisors stop telling clients to save for college? I think the answer is no. They shouldn't tell them to stop saving. I think they should save. It's just a matter of we may not want to save in that particular vehicle, the 529 or the UTMA UGMA. We may want to do some other things or look at other alternatives. Make sure that the parents understand
You call it an UGMA?
Yeah, UTMA UGMA, man. Darn
I've
right.
I've never heard it referred to
Are you
as an
serious?
UGMA. Yeah.
Well, come on down to Kansas. We'll help you out.
No,
Man,
I'm not going to Kansas.
UTMA UGMA. All right. Well, I'm leaving Kansas tomorrow. So Colorado, here I come. All right. So let's move on to recommendations. Manish, what you got?
We were talking to one of our favorite advisors, and she had mentioned FollowUp Then. And although I loathe new technology, I looked into it, and I may sign up for a little bit. Essentially what it is, it allows you to BCC a certain email address to follow up. So if you want to say 8 a.m. at FollowUp Then, when you BCC someone, it'll then give you that reminder. It's a shortcut to not being able to go and add the task yourself, right? And that's most technology is just a shortcut because we're all lazy shits who don't want to go to 2 other pieces of software and add something. So I haven't tested it. I'm going to test it, but I think it's for busy advisors with a lot of individual clients and maybe not as good with the technology stack with CRMs. This is an easy way to stay in your email and still get those task reminders. And so I'll circle back and see if it's been of any success.
Actually, that's a good point. You mentioned handling CRMs. I'd love to hear from advisors if you would like our insight. We've used several different iterations and kind of going down that technology road. We could easily do a podcast on HubSpot or Salesforce.
Well, I think we're going to add that in too, right? I mean, we've gotten a couple pieces of feedback where one of the things advisors yearn for is not just technology, but how other advisors are using that technology.
Right.
And so maybe once a week, once a month, we pop in and maybe review a piece
Sure.
we're using because we've changed over the years, right? We've adjusted and tested and yeah, we have a long list of.
Well, and that's one of the reasons that I always enjoyed Potomac before I ever became an owner of the firm was the fact that as a small firm, and you were the spearhead for this, you were so far ahead on a technology standpoint than most other firms, much larger, including the firms that I had worked at. That was something that I think is of high value, which is why I'm a nomad and you're an ex-nomad, right? We can work from anywhere, and we have the technology to back that up. So, all right, we'll move on to my recommendations. For me, I think the recommendation is going to be Facebook Marketplace versus Craigslist. Now, whether you know what both of those are or not, that's a whole different subject. But the reality is, Craigslist is for years, probably 10 years, has been an easy place to sell stuff, right? I mean, now you see TV advertisements for like Let Go, other software applications. But I think Craigslist was pretty cool for a long time, and then the spammers figured it out. And what I mean by that is you post something, and last time I used Craigslist, 5 minutes is all it took, and I was getting phone calls from spammers and getting communication from spammers in its various forms. So I've given up on Craigslist, and I decided last couple of times I've needed to sell something as we ditched stuff from the apartment. I used Craigslist for the house 2 years ago, getting rid of everything. And then when we got rid of stuff out of the apartment, I started using Facebook Marketplace. So much better. The primary reason is that you can see the profile of the folks that are trying to ask you questions or interested in buying. And what I'm looking for is not anything about race, religion, color, creed, blah, blah, blah. It's have they been on Facebook for a long time? What kinds of posts are they making? Are they, right? I mean, I want to see if they're actually integrated into the system. And that's a pretty good tell whether or not they're spammer or dangerous or whatever. I have gotten a couple where I looked at them and there's 2 or 3 posts over a 5-year period, and it's clearly it's probably just
you can tell what they sold. You can tell what they've sold in the past. Craigslist, you have no idea if they've ever sold anything. If they're the Craigslist killer, you have no idea.
Yeah, and so I just think it's a really easy tool. So kudos to Facebook. I'm not a big Facebook fan. Don't use it a super ton. I'm not looking at it every day, but that marketplace is a pretty cool setup to be able to get stuff sold and actually to buy a couple of things. So it works both directions. And then as a special bonus today, just for you, because I'm having to start working out again. By the way, I did ride almost 6 miles this morning before the rain started, and that wasn't supposed to be here. All right, so my other bonus recommendation is Biscoff cookie butter. That is the most evil thing that I have found in the last 5 years. I don't buy it. I refuse to buy it. I bought one jar. I ate it in a heartbeat, and yeah, it's just pure evil. So I mean, if you're looking for something new to be an addiction, go find Biscoff cookie butter. We'll
Try it
provide a
out.
link for that as well. Yeah, it's worth trying so that you know that the evil does exist in this world, and then you can move on. So what else you got? Anything?
That's it. Let's wrap it up.
All right. So like, share, subscribe, dance your own beat, whatever you got to do. Enjoy. Give us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you. We'll continue on this approach every week, giving you a podcast and conquer risk, right? How we run an RA and our journey. So thanks for listening. Adios.
Thanks.